All right, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for joining us for this very exciting day and webinar. We have such a great group of people here with us today. The webinar concept is an initiative that we've been running with for the last 6 months or so. It's a great way for people from around our community to come together, Binkers from all levels and parts of our company and country, clients, from heads of talent to recruiters to founders and hiring leaders, all coming together to share tips, techniques, traits to all help this group do better and elevate in helping our respective clients build the teams they need to achieve their respective visions. This specific concept for our webinars referred to as the Summit Learning Series. The Annual Binc Summit is a company event that we held just earlier this year, 3 short months ago in lovely Las Vegas. We brought the entire 150-person company together. We invited 15 clients and partners to join us for the 2-day event, and we spent the entire time learning, sharing on all sorts of different topics, whether from personal development, professional development, recruiting, and people operations development, all for the benefit of each of us personally, professionally, and as a community achieving our respective summits. Mike joined us for the summit and imparted some great wisdom to our team, so much so that it was a top-rated session. And we made the choice to repurpose, in this case, Mike is the first presenter to our Summit Learning Series, the opportunity to extend out some of the great benefit that we all were able to receive at the Summit to you all, our respective community. In the Summit Learning Series, we'll be doing another 2 to 3 of these following this initial one. We hope you all are able to capture some of the great benefits that we were all able to capture and respectively enjoy. As we make our way through this webinar, we expect it to run for about 30 minutes. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session immediately afterwards. So as anyone has any questions, as Mike's presenting on the great content, feel free to pop it into chat. Feel free to pop it into the QA box, either with your name associated or anonymously. Kirsten will be capturing all of those questions and will moderate the Q&A with Mike. With that, I will pass it over to Robert to introduce Mike to y'all.
Hey everyone, I'm Robert Weber, Recruiting Director at Binc, located in LA. We're super excited to have you all join us for our first webinar of our Summit Speaker Edition. I was fortunate enough to work with Mike during our partnership with Dropbox, and I had the distinct pleasure of facilitating the conversation with him at our first annual Binc Summit in Las Vegas earlier this year. It was the highest rated session of our summit. Some quotes from our attendees included, "I could not resist," and shared my admiration for Mike Moriarty's talk with him at the summit. He literally spoke to my soul, validated a lot of what I was already doing in my day-to-day. It also gave me new ideas and inspired me to rethink a few of my strategies. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. You painted a very detailed picture of the challenges you faced and how you used a methodical approach to conquering them that I found to be extremely motivating, inspiring, and applicable. Mike Moriarty did a fantastic job and gave me great client-specific advice. I've structured my work time since that session, and it's helped my numbers significantly. Mike Moriarty's insight and candor into how he is successfully using metrics is fantastic and immediately actionable. It really got me excited to fine-tune my recruiting. Mike Moriarty is a Southern California native, proud alumni of Cal State Long Beach, and now resides in Austin, Texas. He started his career in finance before moving into recruiting at Google, where he worked his way up to leading engineering recruiting teams. And he is currently the head of global recruiting at Dropbox. Thank you for joining us today, Mike. I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thanks for having me, Robert. Binc as a group. I'm very honored to be here. I genuinely mean that. It's kind of weird to be on this side of the camera. I spent a lot of my career at these types of events, webinars, conferences, and the value of that is I've kind of taken away from things that I liked about those and hope to get that across to you today. First off, this is the best picture of me on there, so that it's the best as it gets. So it's all downhill from there. Secondly, my goal today is to spend about a half hour with y'all just talking just about my experience. It's kind of unique, but it's also not Bible. This was just my experience. But if you want to jump on my religion, jump on board. Let's go. But the goal again is just I want to give you a history lesson of why I have this context and why I kind of came about to come up with these philosophies, kind of what I'm doing now and how I'm using them. And share those with you guys. I think the reason I moved up my career pretty quickly, especially in a staffing career, is I've been able to help people. And I tell everybody my job isn't to, I'm not your boss, not your lead, I'm not your manager's manager. I'm your business coach. And so that's how I've kind of gotten to where I've gotten today. And I want to share it with y'all and see what resonates and kind of give you the same advice. Take what resonates and whatever doesn't, I'm not going to force it down your throat. So let me go back and kind of walk you through why I am who I am and how I've kind of gotten here. So I didn't go to a great school. Went to Cal State Long Beach. Like I do love it. It is better than Robert's school, so I got that going for me. But out of school, I had a average degree, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur, so I knew I wanted to own my own business, own my own stuff, and own my results. So the only company crazy enough to give me a job, and normally to start your own company, you need capital, right? I had no capital, just out of school. So Northwestern Mutual in San Francisco said, hey, listen, we won't pay anything unless you sell anything, but you got to move to San Francisco, and it's commission only. So come on up, and we'll train you. And my goal was pretty simple out of college, much like most people, is I wanted to make millions and millions of dollars. That was like my simple goal. Like for some reason, the amount of money I made determined my value. So that was it. So I get there and everybody says, to write out 200 names of everybody you know in the Bay Area and how you know them, and then call them. My list was about 15, 20 people long from people like alumni at Long Beach. So I didn't have a big list. What was great is that I really had great training. And this was at that time about a 150-year-old company. So they have seen people succeed and not succeed and have these great philosophies and metrics to drive you to success. So the second bullet point there was what they called the 10-3-1 ratio. What that meant was, Mike, for every 10 referrals you receive in this business, you're going to call all of them. 3 of those folks should sit down with you, and you can kind of do your meeting and understand their challenges and try to address their problems. And then 1 of those 3 people will buy from you. If you stay in touch with the other 2 that didn't buy from you, 1 of those other 2 will buy from you in the next 12 to 18 months. I was like, well, that sounds great. So I jump into this. The good thing about San Francisco is, and I focused mainly on lawyers, because all lawyers' information were online. So I hopped on the phone, I made 40 cold calls a day, and then I called people. And I started just running around San Francisco, like a crazy person. And what I found is my metrics were not 10-3-1. They were closer to like 25-5-1. And so when I sat down, I looked at it and I'm like, okay, I'm spending my time. My problem wasn't getting referrals. The right amount of people were actually getting on the phone with me and then sitting down and meeting with me. I couldn't close. I wasn't closing. I was putting in all this work and wasn't getting to the end result, which was money. And for those of you who have lived in San Francisco or visited, it's not a cheap city. You have to sell something to live there. And so the last bullet point is like, okay, well, the good thing about financial services or most like metric-driven companies is who the top performers are. They're the guys and gals with the big office, driving the nice cars, and have the big team. So I turned around and looked internally at the top producers in the company within Northwestern Mutual in San Francisco and said, let me buy you coffee. How do you do what you do? And they kind of, shared what they could, but they said, Mike, why don't you just bring me in on your next deal and we'll split the commission and we'll go. And some of the other guys in the kind of the pod I was in didn't like that approach. They didn't want to share money. But I looked at it as an investment. You can get 50% of this, great, but I'm going to learn as well. So I started bringing in these folks on these deals, and I was learning, observing how they opened the cases, how they overcame objections, like how they ran their own business, how they did follow-up, what solutions they proposed, and how creative they were. It was incredible for me. What I also found was that when they would close a deal, it was about 4x of what my deals were. So 50% of that was still double what I was making for. So I was actually making more money and learning. So asking for help became a big staple in my life. Without getting too Dr. Phil on you, I kind of had an eat, pray, love moment and said, listen, I don't know if financial services for me. It just wasn't resonating. I was making good money. I was doing everything you should be doing, but I wasn't really fulfilled. And so I had this eat, pray, love moment. I go travel. Long story short, I I meet a woman who now is my wife, by the way, and who worked at Google, and she ends up helping me get a contract job as a sourcer at Google. And I was the second sourcer ever hired at Google without a technical background at this time. And they took a big risk on me. And what I did was, okay, I took this like, okay, I had success here. What am I going to do now? So I go to Google, I go to my boss, and like, how many offers do I need to be successful? It's like, Mike, you need about 4 offers extended is a great body of work. Okay, cool. How many offers does it take to get, or how many on-sites, does it take to get someone an offer? And he was like, yeah, it's about, let's just call it 5. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. I can do the math. Like, so if I get 20 on-sites, I should yield 4 offers. Life is good. If I got more than 20 on-sites, it should yield. Well, what does it take to get someone on-site? And I won't forget this. I went back and I remember talking to my wife about this. He looked at me with a blank stare. I was like, I don't know. Like, just reach out to a bunch of people. And I was so perplexed by this. This is Google. Like, arguably one of the sexiest, most innovative companies of at least my generation. And they have data on all of us. They know where I'm at right now. They know what I'm searching on the internet, but they don't have metrics of like how to be successful as a sourcer. So I saw this as an opportunity. And so what I did was this was about 1 month in. So I started then tracking my numbers. And for those of you that are kind of naturists and want to save the planet, so do I, but I printed out paper every day. I apologize. But what I did is I'd mark like just a check mark for every call I made. When someone answered the call and I do an RPS, I put a little cross through it. And if they move forward, I'd circle that. So I had my numbers that way, simply every single day. And in my first 2 months, I was completely terrible. Out of 120 people at Google, or roughly 120 people, I was ranked about 119th, second to last. And I was really afraid I was going to get let go. And then I was like, okay, well, with that third bullet, I haven't really asked for help. I've just gotten like this official training and told to reach out to a bunch of people. I'm tracking it, but how well am I doing? So again, everyone was stack ranked at Google. I saw the top 5 people and I was like, let me take you to coffee. Good news about Google Coffee is it's free. So I didn't have to pay for anything. And everyone was really nice. And I sat down, same thing. How do you do? What do you do? Why do you do this? And I asked a bunch of questions. And they were very nice and helped me out as much as they wanted to. And I took what I liked. I threw out what I didn't like. And then I dove in and just made this approach, which I'll share with you pretty soon. And every quarter after that, I was second place every single quarter at Google. Never getting first place, which still kind of pisses me off, just to be honest. But the consistency at that top level performance was what kind of got Google's attention. And they kind of said, okay, this guy has something. So then what I did when I started getting my numbers and everything, I worked backwards. So if I needed 4 offers, took 5 on-sites to get an offer. I started doing my math of how many phone screens it took to get to an on-site, and then how many reach outs it took to a phone screen. And so then much like the 10-3-1 ratio, I could then figure out, well, how many reach outs and what do I have to do every day to have a good day? And so my secret to success there was consistency once you have your numbers. So before I get into that, let me kind of explain something. So there are 2 things that every business needs to have to be successful. And for those of you who don't know The Profit, this is The Profit, Marcus Lemonis. I'm addicted to this show. What Marcus does, he's a billionaire. His biggest company that he owns, I think, is Camping World. But he spends time going investing in small businesses. And he has this 3P philosophy of people, process, and product. Like every company needs that recipe to be successful. I don't disagree. He's obviously very successful. But for this case, let's just assume those are in place. So what are the must-haves for any business to be successful? And I use this example with Robert at the Binc Seminar in Vegas. Was let's assume Robert and I are going to open a cupcake store. We'll call it Cal State Cupcakes. And to be successful, we need 2 things. We need a business plan and a profit and loss statement. So let me talk about the business plan. If we're about to open a cupcake store, we need to know who are our competitors. What are the other cupcake stores in the neighborhood? What neighborhoods are we looking? What are the zip codes? What are our costs? What's our overhead? How are we going to market this thing? What's our POS system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You got to put this plan in motion and put dollars and cents to it to make sure you know where you're going to go. It'd be pretty foolish of us to open a cupcake store right next to another cupcake store that's super successful or in a place where people don't buy cupcakes. So we're going to sit down and do the math, and we're going to sit there and iterate on our business plan. An example of that would be marketing. We would say, okay, Robert, like we moved into this neighborhood because we feel like people buy cupcakes. We know that kids love cupcakes and there's a lot of kids in this neighborhood. So that's our plan. And we're going to spend money on mailers, like within 2 miles of our neighborhood. We're going to do some Facebook targeted ads for moms and dads groups on Facebook. And we're going to, go to a local radio show and do that. The business of a business plan, where you need to adjust it is, as everyone comes in and buys cupcakes from us, we're going to need to know where they came from. And that way we know if we're spending money. If everyone's coming in from the radio ad and no one's coming in from the Facebook thing, why am I continuing to invest money in Facebook ads? Maybe I need to double down on the radio or just save money. So you need to have a plan in place for how you're going to do it. So how it applies to recruiting is, think about it as like your intake job. When you're opening a rec and talking to a hiring manager, what do you need to know? How do you sell this role? What's impactful about your company? What technologies do you use if it's technical? Like, what's your value proposition? Where is this located? Et cetera, et cetera. So as a recruiter, like individually you have a plan, but then you need to roll that up into all of your roles and put together a greater plan. I.e., if most of these roles come from referrals from 3 of those 12 roles that you have, then maybe you don't work on sourcing on those as much and you source on the other 9 because you're banking on this. But you need to assess and make sure where things are coming in and when they're coming in at what pace to adjust your plan accordingly. So that's kind of the business plan part. Let me talk to you about P&L. For those of you who don't know P&L, it's profit and loss statement. Are you making money and are you losing money? And how I kind of look at this is, how do you know you're having a good day? I know there's a lot of different people in the audience or on this webinar, as far as ICs, there's managers, there's all these different folks. So this is coming from a multiple lenses. But from a standpoint, let's say it takes 2 months to close a candidate, right? So it's 60 days. How do you know today that you contributed a very good day that's going to impact your bottom line at some point? And in recruiting, there really wasn't anything like this. And there was at my old financial services company. So what I did was I kind of adopted what they had. I sat on my couch on my computer in San Francisco when I was there, when I went to Google, and kind of built this system that I'll share with you in a second, that kind of lets you know if you're having a good day or a bad day. There's 2 must-haves in this system. We give a point value to certain actions. The action must be in control of me, meaning if a hiring manager does something, when they do something, that doesn't derive a point because I couldn't contribute to it. So I need to be able to contribute the lever that gives you value. And then 2, the value of the action must tie into like the impact, like what you're doing, as well, and like how important what you're doing is, as well as how long it takes. So if you're doing something super valuable, like for like a sourcing standpoint, it'd be like transitioning someone to a recruiter, but it doesn't take a lot of time. You kind of determine the values based on those 2 things. And I'll kind of explain to you, and I'll show you here. I have a visual of what it kind of looks like. So let me walk you through this. So if you look at this, and those of you that are kind of, if you haven't done something like this before, it's pretty simple to make. So anything in the white basically shows something that the recruiter can do. Anything above the black line, anything below are just actions that are happening in their business that we like to monitor weekly. For this example, this was something I took a screenshot from my business back at Google a while ago. So this is, the goal at Google is to basically get 100 points a week. If you have 100 points within the week, that's a great week. So 20 points a day if you obviously average that across 5 days. And so what we did is you give values for different actions, like I said. So if you're day 1, you have no business. Robert and I start this cupcake and we have no one in there. The only way I can get 20 points is new reach outs as a sourcer or a recruiter here. And so we give a point for every reach out that the recruiter did. So day 1, 20 points most likely on reach outs. Day 2, 20 points on reach outs. Day 3. And then over time, they'll get phone screens, and that's worth points. And you give time. Then if you move forward, if that phone screen moves forward and you schedule a first phone screen, and then if you transition to a recruiter, we gave more value to there. So on an example, on November 1st here, it looks like I did 10 reach outs. I had 2 recruiter screens, and one of those 2 recruiter screens actually moved forward into a phone screen. So that's what we do. And what I love about this is it provided accountability, and every day I could go home and feel great about my day. And what was nice is where I was like the secret, like I shared before, is consistency. Is there was no week I didn't get 100 points. If it was on Friday and I had 97 points, I had to do 3 more reach outs at a minimum. And that way we created the consistency of gas in your tank, as well as the efficiency of your business kind of moving forward as well. So this is something that we built. I'm working I think Binc uses Gem. I work very closely with Gem. We're working on something like this in the future through their platform. But this is very simple to build. I'm not an engineer, obviously. This is just built in Google Sheets as an example. What's also great about this, why I mentioned there's different audiences is here, is like as a manager, this was what my IC would bring to me every other week or week, depending on your cadence or your one-on-ones. And I could see what they're doing and how they're doing. And so it was incredible. It was much like my ratio of 25-5-1. I could go in here and say, listen, like, it looks like you're doing a ton of reach outs, but no one's getting on the phone with you. Let's look at who you're reaching out to or what the heck you're saying on those reach outs, because that's your problem. Because your ratio between when you talk to them and they move forward is actually incredible. So how do we do the same amount of work but get a greater result? And I know exactly where the snag is in your funnel. Again, like I said before, that's within your control. So that's like your business plan, and then as well as your profit and loss from a recruiter standpoint. So then the question I get asked a lot too is like, okay, so if you have a plan and like a profit and loss statement, I've probably managed, I don't know, 500 to 600 or 700 people now. Why are some people more successful? You all have the same laptop. We have the same amount of time in a day. You know, in a greater team, we're all selling the same product, right? How come there's top producers and not producers? Well, I kind of have 4 things that I've kind of seen over the years that have kind of worked for me. The first one's kind of geared towards if you're a hiring manager. What I found initially, and I guess I'm a little biased towards this because I had no technical background, would be to hire to an attribute. If you're hiring for your team, hire someone with grit. Hire someone who, you know, is accountable. Hire someone who is entrepreneurial. Like, those are skill sets that doesn't matter what you put in. It's much easier, and then to teach that person tech sourcing, for example, as it is someone who knows everything about the tech stack, but then teaching them to have grit, teaching them to be accountable, and teaching them to be entrepreneurial. It just doesn't work that way. And so I've tried this a bunch over the years in inherited teams, and I've seen this to be the most common thread, because as a manager, you're actually going to be, your job is actually to help them be less hard on themselves. They're usually harder on themselves than you'll ever be. So that's kind of the key attribute that I see in success across the board in a staffing environment. 2, kind of tying to those people, know your why. And I capitalize why because why, we hear no more than we hear yes in staffing or even in sales all the time, right? What I have seen is people, and I interview to this way, people who know their why, and their why is usually bigger than them. So their why is being able to provide a better situation for their family, or their parents are immigrants and they want to make sure they pay it back, or their brother looks up to them and they want to be a good example. Whatever it is, when you have 10 on-sites and no one gets an offer, or people declining offers, whatever it might be, if you don't know your why that you can tie back into, that get back on the phone and do the job, that is the difference between someone who is more successful and who is not, in my opinion. That is the skill set I've seen time and time again. The thing with the why is it does change. An example for me is, you know, I'm very close to 40. I have 2 young kids and an amazing wife. And my why is basically them now. I want to make sure I'm there for all of my kids' events, sporting, music, whatever's going on. And I want to make sure, you know, at some point I can provide an opportunity for my wife, who came from nonprofit, who's been at Google for 10 years this next quarter, where if she doesn't want to work at Google anymore, she wants to go start a nonprofit, we can afford to do so. That's my why. That's what gets me going every day. I have pictures of them. I chat with my wife all day. She's in recruiting as well, so that's how we do that. But that's my why. That was not my why 4 years ago when I didn't have kids. You know, my why when I was at Google as a contract sourcer was I want to get converted. And I didn't mention this. This is kind of a selfish plug, but there was only 2 of us out of that 120 person class that got converted. And I was very fortunate to be one of them. And I really associate that to knowing my why and obviously having the business. Third is know the data by tier. This is my next slide. So this is just kind of like a prelude to what we're going to talk about. I get asked a lot too, like, Mike, I've only been in recruiting for 8 years total. I started as a contract sourcer, knowing nothing about Java and, you know, anything. And now here I am running all of recruiting globally for Dropbox. Like, how in the world did that happen? 1, I feel fortunate and lucky, but 2, I think what separates me from a lot of people is I know the data. I understand the data. And a good example I give here too is my wife. My wife, I would not call her a data person. She is an incredible recruiter, incredible person, incredible manager. But she knows her data enough to understand her business. It's not her wheelhouse, but she knows it because she knows that's what's going to drive her success and her team's success. And so I'll get into that in the next slide. And then the last piece is the data. Once you understand it, like, it's good to know it. But then if you don't know how to measure it and then iterate upon it, much like I said in the cupcake example, if I don't know how to measure the percent of people that are coming in from radio ads or whatever, and if it's trending up or down, and I don't make a shift, like, that's on me, right? I'm a bad business owner. So you need to be able to know your data, measure it, and then iterate upon it, be able to trend it and see where you're going. If you try a new process, you need a baseline to see if your process is winning or losing. And you either double down on that process or you stop it right away if it's hurting your business. So those are things that I've seen over the years for people being super successful, probably in anything, to be honest, but especially my experience in staffing. So then let me get into the data. So this is obviously not my wife, but this is when I think of my wife, this is very much what I think her brain looks like when we're going through, I don't know, our monthly finances or whatever else it might be. But data is tiered in my mind. So there's certain data points that carry more weight. So when you look at recruiting, it's a funnel, right? Much like a sales funnel. I like to look at it from the bottom up, and I'll show you what that looks like. It might look a bit different than yours. And again, this is my religion that I've built over the years. This does not have to be yours. You can borrow and steal what you like about it. But let me talk about the 3 tiers of data that I've kind of come up with in my brain. So one, this isn't really impacting the IC. This is if you're a manager in a room or managing a group or an engineering VP, whatever it might be. These are data points that you need to know, in my opinion. The 2 core metrics are called BIS, or butts and seats, how many human beings are taking up money and impacting your financial statement. And you really need to know if that's on or off pace for that time of year. So if your organization is 10 people or wants to be at 10 at the end of the year, and you're sitting at 5, so you're 50% there, but you're 80% through the quarter, you're off pace, right? You're behind. For 50% of the year and you're 50% there, you're right on pace. Like, everyone's happy, right? You need to know kind of how many human beings are sitting there impacting your bottom line. We call that butts and seats. But then again, there's a drill down. So you need to know if you started the year at, let's just say 2, and you want to get to 10, you're at 5, and you're 50% of the way there, like, you're good. But did 3 people start and no one left? Did 5 people start and 2 people left? Did 7 people start and 5 people left? How did you get to that 5? You need to know that math, because that's going to really, if you don't know that math, you're just going to be judged on the 5. So you need to know what got you there, because it could be an attrition problem. It could be a multitude of problems, but that's very important to you to know who started and who left. The other piece is A&S. We call that allocated, not started, meaning you produce an offer, but this person's not starting until next week. So they haven't actually impacted my bottom line. So if I'm a 5 of 10, 60% through the quarter, but I have 1 A&S starting next week, we're having this meeting today. If I had this meeting next week, I'd be at 100%. Since I'm having it today, I'm a bit behind, but I'm not worried, nor that you should be worried, Mr. VP, because I have 1 AMS who's going to start real soon. So don't yell at me. Third is that attrition piece. So what we try to do across every company, and this is probably pretty standard for y'all, but if you want to grow from 2 to 10, like I said, so that's 8 net new, but you think you're going to lose 2 people, you actually need to grow by 10. You don't need to grow by 8, right? So you need to factor that in so you can actually come back to 10. If you just hire 8, by the end of the year, it's going to be hard for you to be sitting at that 10 point, because you don't know when and where those people are going to move. And again, you need to know if that's trending. So you need to know if it's the first month in the quarter and the year you thought you'd lose 2 people and you already lost 2 people, you should be pretty scared, and you should probably readjust your numbers. If you're 11 months into the 12-month quarter and you haven't lost anybody, maybe you bring that number down and you make adjustments. So again, it kind of ties into before, like, know your data, but know where it's trending, because as y'all know, like, when you're sitting in a meeting, it's hard to be perfect at all data points at one time. It's actually impossible. So I need to know what my data is and what it's kind of telling me at this point, and is there enough trend there to, like, raise the red flag. So tier 2, I would say, it kind of applies to everybody. Then it's like, okay, Mike, I'm supposed to be at 7 butts and seats. I haven't had enough people start. No one's left. Like, what is going on with, like, offer accepts? Like, haven't you had enough people get offers to be able to start here? And then here's, you have the debate, like, well, yes, but they're all declining, or no, we haven't even gotten people to offer, right? That would be the next stage. But if they're declining, like, there's different reasons why they're accepting or declining or what it might be. So if you go, Boris obviously owns Binc, and so if I go to Boris and say, hey, Boris, hey, there's a San Francisco problem with accepts, like, our ratios are 15 points down. And that's my only statement. Boris is going to kind of freak out or not really know how to help. There's so many sub reasons why that could be. Well, Boris, actually, it's not just San Francisco. It's actually the IC3s for the mobile role. We're not having any success. We don't actually feel like we're evaluating people fairly, or the comp band is low, or whatever it might be. That percentage is actually bringing down all of San Francisco. So here's what I'm doing to fix that. Once that's fixed, we expect the total overall pass-through for San Francisco to go back up. But there's all these reasons. Decline reasons. Is everyone declining you because of compensation. Then I would highly recommend you go talk to your comp team and go talk to your, finance team and say, what can we do differently? Because obviously what we're doing is diversity. Are you seeing pass rates for women less than men? That's a problem. Like I said, geography. Level is a big issue. It's curious if you cut that. It's interesting to see, you can combine these. So, one of these is source down here. I look very often at like our source pipeline by level. And I can tell you the more senior it gets here at Dropbox, the sourcing channel of all the channels actually has a big challenge. And so now we're putting in some processes that if you're sourced at a senior level, you're actually going to get a different process because I know my pass-through rate's down, hoping to fix that. By team, it's much easier to sell this team than that team. Skill set, front end, mobile, SRE, whatever, DevOps. Source, like I said, it's sourcing, passive sourcing, referral, online, agency, website, whatever it might be. And then time. I look at this pretty religiously on a monthly basis, is how much time do people spend in role? And you can cut it all by all this data. So I want to know how long my IC5s that are passively sourced sit between my phone screen and on-site stage. And if I think that's too long, or if I see a trend that that's longer than the average of everybody, there's a problem statement that we can work. So that's tier 2. So you're like, okay, I don't have enough butts and seats. I kind of have, declines aren't a problem, offer accept, seem on pace, but my pipeline seems a little low. You see the drill down's pretty much the same. You just got to look at your next data set the same way. Okay. Am I having even enough on-sites to justify getting enough offers that are accepted? So maybe it's a pipeline problem. And again, the pipeline problem can be cut by all these different things as well, besides decline reasons, because obviously they haven't declined you. But the other one I would check in with that I think a lot of companies miss out on is withdrawal rate. How many people are falling out of your process? That's a leak in your bucket that is extremely expensive that I would encourage you to monitor. And that's something that we do. And then we monitor it again by source. And we see that there's certain channels where people actually fall out faster than other channels. So we're putting in new processes again to address those things. So that's data, and that's what I mean by the tiered data set. And so I don't know why I put this GIF in here. I think it's kind of funny. It just kind of makes me laugh. But there's really 4 key takeaways I want to make sure you all take away from this. The first one being, what's your plan? So when you get all these recs and you have time, or if you're a new parent, or like you got to combine the personal and professional, like what am I going to do? How am I going to make sure that the hours I'm sitting in front of my desk or in front of my laptop like are productive? Because I can tell you from a commission only employee, if you didn't get paid unless you sold something, you would operate very different. I was paid based on how efficient I spend my time, which is why I measured everything. And when I was spending time and not getting paid, I stopped doing that. When I was getting paid by spending time here, I doubled down there. That's a business, right? You got to be looking at things. So what's your plan today? And how are you going to iterate upon it? Know your why. You're going to have good days and bad, personally and professionally. If you don't know this and are constantly being challenged by your partner or your boss, you should be digging into your why. And I look at this with my wife pretty much every quarter. We sit down and look at our plans. We write in our journals and all these things, and we set goals for ourselves. And then for me, like I know my why. I look at, like, I used to watch inspirational videos and things like that to make sure I didn't let myself beat myself. And so that's knowing your why is going to really help you do that. I would really challenge you to get comfortable with data. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. Again, I'm smarter than Robert, but that's about it. Like, know your data. Like, understand what means what. Ask questions. Talk to someone in your company who probably understands data. If I can figure this stuff out, I promise you can. But if you get comfortable with data, the trends, and those things, the last piece, and why I think, honestly, why I'm sitting in this seat, now, is because you have to tell your story. If you don't tell your story, someone else will tell it for you. So my job, especially being a remote manager, I sit in Austin, Texas, and those who don't know, Dropbox is based in San Francisco. I need to be managing up all the time. So I literally just sent an email today to a senior VP saying, hey, we're seeing this happen. We don't think it's a problem yet, but we're really worried about it. Here's what we're doing to address it, and I will make sure that if it continues, I keep you in with it. Like, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them, but make sure you have a solve. Like, my job is to take away their worries and stress about recruiting. Like, I want them to think, oh, well, Mike's got it. And if anybody asks them, like, oh, what happened with this? Oh, yeah, Mike just said they're doing this, this, and this. He's on top of it. We'll keep you updated. My job is to make sure they are protected and have all the information they need at all times, but I'm very action-oriented and data-driven. So that's what I would say are the 4 things I really hope you take away from this. And so with that, don't forget to tip your waiter. Thank you for having me. I'm sure there's some questions and answers coming. I'll pass it back to Kristen to kind of moderate that, but thank you for your time and listening to my experience.
Thanks, Mike. We do have a few questions. Feel free to enter your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box. You can also mark yourself anonymous. And before we do that, I'm gonna launch a quick poll to everyone. And then we'll jump right into Q&A. So let's see, the first question is, you talked about working backwards to know how many subs, recruiter screens, et cetera, you need. How do you know if your bottom of funnel is optimized? How much time should you spend optimizing?
Yeah, I think if you don't have this data, like you need to find a baseline of what this data means. So meaning if you don't have it, you need to just collect it. Just go about your days, your weeks, your months, and collect this data. From that point, you will have baselines of which you can establish, do I have enough or not? So what we do here at Dropbox is we know these numbers by skill set, by location, and by level. And I have hundreds of roles open here, let's just say in the EP&E world. And so the way we use that data is saying, okay, this pipeline, as you guys all know, like it's almost just as bad to underfill pipeline as it is to overfill and oversell pipeline, because you fill the role and then you have nowhere for these people to go. So we know those numbers and we work backwards to kind of say, okay, this many offers is this many offer stats, on-sites, and then phone screens. And what we do is we send out a monthly note and we kind of have this like, I don't know, financial ticker essentially that goes out to the sourcing team and says, if you have a role for this level, this skill set, like prioritize this one, because these roles do not have enough pipeline yet. So to make sure we're filling the right pipelines with the right folks. Now, again, if a candidate is super specific on a certain technology or role, we're not going to force them. But for the candidate that's open or like agnostic to where they want to work, those are where we push those things. So my advice is that get a baseline, understand what they even are, start accumulating those things, and then you'll kind of see over time, it takes time to like validate that data. You don't want to make a decision off of like not enough information. But once you get enough information, you can then see, okay, it looks like it takes this many phone screens, this many on-sites for this many offers, and these are where they're coming from. So this is what I need to fill these types of roles. And then you just work backwards and kind of track it. Like, okay, if this role has 15 phone screens, it's full. Like I actually don't need to put anyone else towards it because that's going to get the ratio to fill.
Great. The next question is, read the P&L table that was presented. Are there any ways to make the aggregation of this data easier? For example, any tools you recommend for automating the logging of this data versus sourcers, recruiters, having to go and manually log each RO?
Yeah, it's tough. Honestly, I used to kill a lot of trees. Then some people on my team got smart and we used to, what's it called? Like layer it so you can do the dry erase marker. But then now we're partnering with Gem. So Gem is a partner of ours that we're working very closely with, and they have all your actions logged in your, in their ATS as well as our CRM. So they are automating this for us now. So it's something that I don't want to speak for them, but I'm hoping they kind of, open up to kind of their users. And we're working really closely with them to not only do the point system, but as well as like quantifying that. So you could just go you should be able to go at the end of your day and be like, oh, I have 27 points. That's a good day. But that's in the short term, get someone who knows Google Sheets or Excel. It's very easy to roll up, just summing columns and things like that.
Great. The next question is, why are some people more successful than others? Specifically, the point of hire for attributes, grit, accountability, and being entrepreneurial. Do you mind sharing your thoughts and tactics on how to decipher those attributes during resume profile review and during the interview process?
Yeah, resume is really hard, right? Because like if you looked at my resume before Google, it probably wasn't the most attractive thing. And so I'm not as big on the resume part. I think if someone has some good companies or whatever, like you're willing to talk to them, you have to talk to them, right? And then I'm not a fan of like the Google like GC interview of like how many ping pong balls fit into like a Volkswagen bus. But I am a fan of how they kind of interview. We've kind of taken it here is, tell me a time when or walk me through an example of this. And like I like to ask times about when people fail. And so if someone like walk me through a time, and if they just say like, the biggest failure I have is I work 70 hours a week and that's all I do. And it's like, that's your biggest failure, but like really like go fly a kite. Like the people that said, listen, I really tried this point system, or I really tried this process. I don't even care if it worked. If they owned it, try to put it in process, and then changed and iterated upon it, like that's a big win. And then I ask everybody, really, like, why, you seem to have success in your life. Like, what drives you? And then they're going to give you, usually some people give you like a typical, like knee-jerk kind of answer. But then it's my job to like dig, like ask like the iceberg question. What does that mean to you? Like, why do you want to get into this? Like, I know you want to help people, but like, what are you doing that for? What is the reason driving all of this? And then just sit back and listen. And you really got to like help people get accountable or get uncomfortable. And then again, for you, you got to get uncomfortable. Like if you want someone to be vulnerable and transparent with you, be vulnerable and transparent with them. Like you'll get what you give. So if you're just sitting there very corporate and reading these notes and saying like checking off boxes, you're probably not going to get there, right? But if you're sitting there and like emotional with them and closing your laptop and just kind of digging in and sharing experiences from you, you'll get it back for the right candidate. The challenge is with like a candidate that has those attributes and not the skills yet, it is a bigger investment on your part. Like it's going to take more time to ramp that person. But you will get paid off in spades in quarters to come. And those people, those are the people that you usually see drive initiatives. We have someone here, I don't want to mention his name, but he was someone who had experience, but when I interviewed him, it's probably one of the best interviews I had because he knew exactly why he was here. And he moved across the country to come to work at Dropbox. And he's the guy that started, we have every Friday, we have this gratitude jar where people pick what they're grateful for and who they're grateful for, and they throw it in this jar. And we all sit around every Friday and talk about it and like shout out each other. I didn't think of that, like he did. And so they're drivers to the culture as well. And so I would just ask those questions and really suss it out. But, if you're uncomfortable, if you're a new manager and don't want to get awkward, ask for permission. Like ask for permission to get awkward. Like, listen, if I feel like I really want to understand you so we're evaluated fairly and we can really build rapport and understand if this role is best for us, is it okay if I dig into some questions and ask you some uncomfortable questions? Is that fair? Like you guys all heard, I'm a sales guy, first and foremost. Like, of course that's fair. That's why I asked that question. But now I've been validated. Like I feel comfortable maybe asking a question that if I didn't get that permission ahead of time, I might not have asked. So those are types of strategies that I would say to go get those things. And it usually has worked out really well for me to hire to the attribute part. And now if they have the attributes and the skill set, like that's a no-brainer. Those people are obviously great.
Great. I think we have time for about 2 more questions. The next one is, at what size of company is it important to build these metrics into your recruiting processes? If you're 20-ish people, only hiring 3 to 4 people per quarter, what are the most important metrics to begin with?
Yeah, I would say it scales for sure. That's where probably my experience is limited. I've been at Dropbox and Google, so huge and less huge. But I would say, if you're hiring 3 people a year, I would start at the bottom of the funnel and work our way up, right? So I would do exactly, start at the tier 1, make sure you have the butts and seats, the attrition assumptions, and those things. And then I would start ranking with the offer, accepts, and decline information, and like the layers of that as best as you can. I would use tooling, like we use Jam and Greenhouse. We built things in there to do it for us. It just takes good data integrity. And we have data integrity OKRs here at Dropbox to make sure people are putting in good data, because if good data is not in, it's really hard for us to make good decisions when they pull it out. So I would start there, and then as your business grows, you probably grow with it. Makes a ton of sense. But I would at least have the accept and decline information, and then maybe on sites further, just to make sure you guys know whether you're on pace or off pace for hiring for the year.
And our last question is, how do you motivate your team to keep their data up to date?
I mean, OKRs are kind of a bully word, right? But we OKR on it. But it's important for any leader to understand the why, right? What happens if there's bad data in, what I'll do is I'll pull a report for whatever reason. Let's just say it's we're behind in females for a certain organization. So I'll pull all our information and it's off. And so now what I have to do is go back to the team and say, okay, now we got to scrub this information. And there's a lot of busy work that's kind of involved in there because we got to get this right. And so for us to be able to actually help them do their job more efficiently and to make decisions to make their lives easier, I need good data in, and so do they. And even like from an evaluation standpoint, like if you want to be fairly evaluated from like your annual or biannual reviews, I need good data in here to make sure I know your story full and foremost. And so if you have good data and you're hoping that I know what's going on, like that's just not good business, right? So if you're a business owner and you wanted to make sure, and if you, like I said before, if Robert and I were in this cupcake shop and we didn't know any of this information, we'd probably go out of business. And that's real money that we invested. And I think that's the thing that I'm very grateful that I've learned from, coming from sales and commission-only sales, is applying that to anything really, but then to staffing has obviously worked for me and worked for teams that I've built. But it's just a matter of accountability, but they have to understand the why. And so for them, once they know their numbers, they know their point value, it actually like makes their world a lot easier. They can predict and control their outputs more consistently, and they know exactly what they have to put into them. And then if they want more output for the same result, like they have to like tweak a process within there to make the ratios go up, or just do more, right? And so that's what's kind of nice, is it creates freedom and predictability for an IC as well. But with bad data, you're just hoping, and I don't want to curse, but screw hope, man. Like that, I'm not hoping I get the job or get converted or move up in a career. I'm going to control what I can control. And so that would be my long-winded answer to that question.
Great, thanks, Mike. And that's all of the time that we have for questions now.
Perfect. So, well, thank you for having me, y'all. I really, really appreciate it. It's kind of crazy that I don't know how many people are on here, but people actually wanted to hear my 10 cents, my experience. I hope it was useful. I'm really grateful to Binc. They've been great partners to us and a company that I believe in very much. I will pass it back to Boris to kind of lead us out. But again, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you so much, Mike. We are hugely grateful and appreciative of your time and motivation to share with us. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. It was an incredible community, and ultimately this is all about you and us and our ability to elevate our game to serve our respective companies' hiring needs accordingly. Reminder, this was fully recorded. It'll be shared out to everyone who registered and attended. Some great nuggets in there to rewatch. It'll be posted on our website. And then again, this is the first in our summit series, so keep an eye out for part 2 and invite to that shortly. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.